Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. More Pillage for you. It's been a while, but they also just dropped a new expansion, so we've got several videos coming out for you guys, taking a look at the new factions, gear, etc. that's coming out for it, and then giving you guys a nice review of these different things, which is then also going to cause us to kind of consider maybe a second faction to pick up for the game, but with this for this time frame, right? As it says, it's called the Fall of Rome, so roughly 3rd to 7th centuries AD. Where this ends is kind of where Pillage proper picks up with the core game. But yeah, this gets us basically late antiquity, which is really cool. A lot of people were asking for it, and Pillage is really just such a fantastic system. It makes sense to be able to field this, so or bring the game into this system, or sorry, into this time period. So we're going to have several videos, as we said, for you guys. We're going to kind of skip through like the basic things here as far as like new weapons and gear and rules and stuff like that. But we just really want to start on the factions because that's, again, some really interesting history and not something that always gets wargamed enough, and some awesome looking minis there. So the first one that we'll be looking at today, guys, are the Merovingian Franks. Very cool faction, and really some neat history behind them as they kind of slowly became involved with the Western Roman Empire and then gradually kind of became the actual real successors in the West. So let's jump in. They bring us some special rules, so they actually get like a double page entry here. So special rules that are considered what are called difficult terrain experts, so they don't take penalties when moving through the following terrain: forests and marshes. Well, that tends to be a pretty common terrain type for the game, so actually that has a lot of usage for them, especially the forest, right? It's probably the easiest one that people will have for terrain. Not everybody's necessarily using has proper terrain for marshes, but nonetheless there are some scenarios that have little bodies of water and stuff like that. So really these guys are going to be quite adept at coming at you from all kinds of different angles and really being able to position and maybe even sort of fade away or run away in the case of some scenarios if they've maybe captured loot and are trying to escape, where it's going to be difficult for the opponent to chase them. Also excellent swimmers, so +2 to all swimming rolls. So again, yeah, these guys are essentially our amphibious assault force as far as a lot of these factions go. Another neat rule too is called Chieftain's Aura. Hairstyles are vitally important to the Merovingians because they advertise your social standing. While your chieftain still has his hair, his legitimacy is unshakable. So what that means for us in the game is while a Merovingian chieftain still has all his hit points and his hair, his Franks' morale cannot be dented, and they automatically pass all their morale checks. Pretty solid stuff there. So obviously it's going to behoove you to try and keep your chieftain out of harm's way for as long as possible. Now they also do have a unique talent, right? So it's always nice in the way that the game doesn't burden us with tons and tons of special rules, but just enough flavor for all these factions to make them unique without, again, burdening us with tons of pages and copious amounts of rules and other stuff to remember. So Palatine Guard, it's 50 gold for that. And basically it's an army's elite. So when a Merovingian chieftain is wounded, he can choose to assign the hit to any other allied figure in base-to-base contact with him. So considering how long that'll help keep the chieftain alive, and maybe in that case I think keep the aura alive, that's actually a potent investment. So probably not worth the points in very small games, right? Because 50 gold is a lot. But if you think in some of the slightly larger Pillage games, that could very well be worth spending on that. So definitely a lot of neat things going on for these guys right out the gate here. Oops. So then let's get into their actual list proper. And again, one of the nice things with Pillage is, pretty much all these army lists are one page. It's basically, you have your different types of guys, your troops. You got more or less the same weapons across the board. Some factions will have things, some will not. Some are more adept at using certain gear, which will cause the gear to be more or less expensive. And in this case, so these guys do not have any of the super heavies, right? Cataphracts are a unique unit in the game. We'll see that. Healers, they do have access to the supply wagon. And again, base cost here, so they do get the 40-point chieftain. I think in some factions we've seen 50-pointers, right? So that's a little bit of a discount there. So protection, obviously unarmored doesn't cost anything because there's nothing there. Armor and shields, the pretty much standard 10 and 5 there. Melee weapons, the improvised is free. Spears are also pretty cheap for them. Hand weapons, about the normal. No Contos, right? Doesn't make sense for them to have that particular gear. Interestingly enough, but no slings for these guys. They do have an Angon. The bow is pretty hefty. But the Francisca, which is going to be their kind of like unique weapon, is certainly there. So 10 gold for that. They do have access to horses. I think more or less normal cost on that. No banners though. You could bring a Warhorn and no Warhounds. So interesting stuff there. So nothing too crazy there. It is nice that they have that unique war gear, but then their special rules, I think, for the faction are really what will help us out there. Supply wagon's interesting. We don't have any like javelins or anything, so that's interesting. But yeah, all in all, a nice list. Let's go back just a tick though, just to see what they're giving us for the special rule of the Francisca. So those are just some regular talents. We'll have a separate video on that. There's the Francisca. Oh, and the Angon. So let's see what that actually is going to do. Okay, there's. So it's a javelin with a harpoon-shaped spearhead, likely derived from the Roman pilum. So basically the same as a javelin, but hits targets with shields on a 4-up. Okay, pretty nice stuff there. Does have a 6-inch range, as does the Francisca, the axe. So, and the nice thing with the Francisca, which is what the Franks were infamous for, such a nasty piece of gear, basically a -1 penalty on the target's defense roll. So we always like that. So if we can load up as many of those as we can afford in our list, but let's take a look at the full description here. So, favored by the Frankish elite, it is a throwing axe used by Germanic peoples between the 4th and 7th centuries. Range and accuracy aren't great, but the effect could be devastating. So, a Francisca can only be used after declaring a charge. Before measuring the charge distance, make a shooting attack with the Francisca. If the target is eliminated, the charge is canceled, and the figure that threw the Francisca, their movement ends. Otherwise, resolve the charge as normal. Throwing a Franciscan is a -1 penalty on the target's defense roll, and it can be carried alongside any melee weapon, but not with any ranged weapons. So keep that in mind with your list building. So the neat thing there, I guess, is we get a throwing attack, but then we also get our charge as well. So all in all, pretty interesting bit there. I don't know if they've already released an FAQ for that, but you would think throwing it will make it kind of a one-use weapon. Now, realistically, it would be nice if, like, hey, you threw it, you charged, maybe you killed the guy that you were fighting, and you pick it back up again for future use. But something that I think we'll have to get defined in the game. But it is a nasty little kit there. Again, we're softening up the enemy. Hopefully hopefully it lands on the charge in and kills the opponent. That way we don't actually necessarily have to finish the charge and get into combat and maybe risk losing our own model, at least from that initial action. So could free up some things for later, but it is just a nice way of getting into combat. And certainly things that have weaker armor to begin with, those would be nice targets for that, just to make their rolls even worse. So let's jump back to the list just to double check and see how many points those were. So again, we got all that stuff. Yeah. So those Angons were 10. Again, probably not something that we need to overload the chieftain with, but we can get 10 points for those either side. So yeah, that's a pretty solid weapon, all things considered. We don't have anything special for the horses though, so no special tactics necessarily for them, but it is nice to at least have access to the horses with some basic things there, and they're not too terribly expensive for us. We do get the Warhorn, so that's good. No banners though for these guys, so you won't have access to that, although the Warhorn is already pretty dang good. And again, no cataphracts for these guys. But yeah, I'd say largely an infantry list with kind of that effect that the chieftain is super important in this list in particular. You do have that interesting talent that you can buy, but really it's nice that these guys get essentially 2 special war gear options that you can take advantage of. So let us know, guys, if you've already played a Merovingian list, how that's gone for you. If you've played it sort of historically here with things within this expansion as far as other adversaries, and just your overall list building thoughts on the Merovingians here. Let us know in the comments, like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.